This week's episode is all about finding the balance between helping and enabling, how to give others the confidence to say, I can. Support builds strength, but rescue builds dependence. So let's discover 10 ways to help them without holding them back. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do isn't fixing, rescuing, or carrying someone. It's stepping back just enough to let them wobble, try, and grow their own wings. Let's help them fly, not rely. Hey friends, welcome back or welcome for the first time. However you got here, I'm so glad you pressed play today. Whether you're a longtime listener or this is your very first episode, thank you for showing up and giving yourself this moment. And if someone sent this to you, then thank them for caring. Today, I want to talk about something that's sometimes very difficult to do, and that's to find the balance between helping and enabling, teaching others to fly without being their wings. While we think we are helping and protecting, sometimes it goes too far, and the support we give becomes the crutch that they can't live without, or they're too fearful or too set in the pattern to let go of it and find their own feet. It's a truth I've seen many times in parenting and friendships in my own life experiences. When we do everything for someone out of love or out of the urge to protect, something gets quietly shaped inside them, a sense that maybe they can't. They begin to depend. They begin to feel insecure. They don't get the chance to practice, to fail, to dust themselves off, and then to become confident through experience. And that's a hard idea because helping feels so good. And sometimes it's easier to take over. But ironically, the most loving thing we often can do is step back, to scaffold, and to allow someone else the space to try, even when it's uncomfortable for everyone involved. In today's episode, we'll talk about why that matters. What happens when people learn they can't? It's the psychological idea of learned helplessness, the science of building confidence, so self-efficacy, and practical ways to borrow hope and strength from others while still allowing people to become their own rescuers. Now, sometimes we have to be more involved and protective, maybe to help someone due to mental illness, addiction, or other significant problem. But I'll give you phrases you can use, small rituals to practice, and ways to hold them lovingly while they find their own wings. But let's start simple. When someone you care about struggles, your instinct is natural: help, fix, rescue. You want them to suffer less. You care about them, and you want to speed up their success, and you want to keep them safe. And that's beautiful. But humans learn through experience. Confidence grows from doing. The person who learns to ride a bike becomes confident because they wobble, fall, and then get back on, ideally with someone there to steady the seat for the first few moments. But they don't pedal the bike for them. We do too much for someone, and we short-circuit that learning. We remove the friction that invites practice. And over time, the person can begin to expect rescue and stop trying to figure things out for themselves. They may start to doubt their own judgment, their voice, the one that says, I can do this. That stays quiet, and they start to listen more to what others tell them to do, more than what they tell themselves. It's also a subtle dynamic of identity. We form a story about who we are from what we repeatedly do. If the repeated pattern is, someone else solves my problems, then the story becomes, I'm the one who needs others to fix things for me. And that belief can be hard to shake, and it quietly narrows our mind to what our possibilities might be. We become restricted, and our wings get clipped. And yet we can be compassionate and still create space for learning. We can scaffold. So think of it this way. When a house is being built or remodeled, workers use scaffolding. That scaffolding doesn't become the house, and it doesn't do the building itself. Instead, it provides temporary support so the house can rise up safely and securely. And once the structure is strong enough to stand on its own, the scaffolding comes down. And that's exactly how healthy support works in our lives. When we do everything for someone else, it's like trying to be the house itself. We take away their chance to build, to strengthen, to stand on their own. But if we serve as scaffolding, we give them just enough support while they learn, grow, and build their own confidence. And eventually, they won't need that scaffolding anymore because they'll be strong enough to carry themselves forward. We can offer tools, encouragement, and presence without doing the tasks for them. That way, we make it possible for them to fail safely and to discover their own competence. And the same goes in reverse. You too can lean on scaffolding when you're in a season of rebuilding. Borrow strength, hope, or encouragement from someone else temporarily. Remember, the goal is always to become strong enough that the scaffolding can be removed and you can stand tall on your own foundation. There's a formal psychological idea that helps explain what can happen when people repeatedly experience lack of control, and it's called learned helplessness. Originally described by researchers like Seligman and Meyer in experiments with animals, the term refers to what happens when an organism is exposed to negative events that it cannot control. Later, even when escape becomes possible, the organism fails to act because it's learned that its actions don't matter. This work formed the foundation for understanding how repeated uncontrollable events can lead to passivity. In humans, learned helplessness is linked to feelings of hopelessness, reduced motivation, and depressive symptoms. Essentially, the conviction that one's actions won't change outcomes. Thinking that you have no control can shape patterns and physiology in ways that are sticky and hard to reverse. When we do everything for someone, or when systems continually rob a person of control, we risk inadvertently teaching helplessness. People need predictable opportunities where their choices make a difference. Even small chances to exert control, make a simple decision, complete a modest task, strengthen the internal sense that I matter, my actions matter. And these small wins are the antithesis of learned helplessness. And that's the heart of the matter. We want to avoid a world where our loved ones learn that trying is futile. We want to create a world where effort produces feedback and where that feedback is visible. That's how confidence is built. So the question to ask ourselves is, does this action increase their capacity or reduce it? Does it help them or ultimately backfire and hurt them? Now, many of you know that I get ideas for podcasts based on my own life and conversations with others, but also when ideas are thrown in my path. And this came up in a few conversations with friends this past weekend, trying to figure out where the line was between helpful and enabling. But I also was recently reading a mystery type book called The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers. Good book, by the way. And one sentence stuck out, and I just read it this week. So again, thank you, universe, for putting this in my path. The book is about two sisters and how one was always taking care of the other because of the family dynamics and how the parents weren't available for the care that was needed. At one point, the now adult sister that had always been taken care of and mothered said something to the effect of, "Did you always take care of everything for me because I couldn't do anything for myself? Or was it that I couldn't do anything for myself because you always took care of everything for me?" And that's what we're trying to avoid and deal with today. So to make this shift from helplessness to helpfulness, it helps to know how confidence develops. Psychologist Albert Bandura described self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to succeed in specific situations, and identified four primary sources that shape it. Mastery experiences, those are actual successes. Vicarious experiences, so seeing others similar to you succeed. Verbal persuasion, that was a hard one, also known as encouragement. And physiological or affective states, meaning how do we interpret our feelings and bodily cues. He found that mastery experiences are the most powerful, so actual successes. When people succeed, even in small things, they update their belief to, I can do this. That's why we want to give people tasks that are challenging but achievable. Vicarious experiences matter too. So seeing a peer who looks like you succeed makes success seem possible. And verbal encouragement, honest, specific praise nudges belief along. And finally, helping people reframe bodily signals like nervousness from I'm too nervous and I can't, to I'm excited and learning. That helps prevent your feelings from hijacking the outcome. So, if your aim is to help someone learn to fly, you want to design opportunities rooted in these sources, the tiny mastery moments, the role models they can watch, the right kind of encouragement, and tools to regulate emotions. That combination builds real resilient confidence. And sometimes people don't have enough inner fuel to start, and that's where borrowing comes in. Borrowing hope, belief, and strength from community, mentors, or rituals. This doesn't mean making them dependent on others forever. It's about using social resources as temporary scaffolding while the person builds their internal reserves. Hearing someone else's beginning to end story of struggle and small wins is borrowing hope. It says, if they could, maybe I can too. They can borrow strength in the words you say to them, as a few words at the right time can change a trajectory, and short, loving check ins can create gentle pressure to act. Helping them design small rituals can transfer courage and belief from you to them. For example, a 2-minute pep talk before presentations, a family handshake before auditions, or a short written note tucked into a bag that says, "You got this." Rituals can reframe internal states and provide a dependable source of courage. Remember, borrowed belief should be temporary and aimed at creating permanent internal belief. The final goal is that the person hears their own voice say, "I can," not just yours. But what about overhelping and cultural trends, where societal roles have created this model of intensive parenting? Research on overparenting, sometimes called helicopter parenting, and excessive rescue shows associations with anxiety, depression, and lower autonomy in young adults, meaning they can't really do things for themselves. When adults do too much for children, solving problems, shielding them from every discomfort, those children can miss important developmental tasks that build resilience and problem-solving skills. And research suggests that while well-intentioned protection can reduce short-term pain, it may increase long-term vulnerability. And honestly, the same can be said for helicopter helping of adults, which can be just as tricky. So whether you're parenting, managing, or loving someone through a hard patch, consider whether your help is scaffolding toward independence or softening the lessons that produce competence. So here's 10 practical approaches you can use, whether it's in parenting, friendships, workplaces, to support people in building competence rather than dependency. So the first is scaffold and then release. Offer support that's temporary and gradually reduced. For example, instead of filling out a form for someone, sit next to them and say, "Let's do the first one together, and then you can try the next." When they do the second, fade out. The gradual release of responsibility gives immediate support while ensuring the person can continue. Break tasks into micro wins. Big tasks feel overwhelming. And we know that here. We're always talking about little by little. So break them into bite-sized steps, maybe 5 to 15 minutes each, and celebrate each step, each one that's completed. Experiences, even small ones, accumulate. The next is teach the skill. Don't just give the solution. You know that old saying of teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime, but if you give him fish, he eats for a day. I think I actually said that backwards, but you know what I mean. If someone asks for help with a problem, ask, which part do you want me to help with? Brainstorming ideas, making a plan, or taking the first step? Offer tools and frameworks rather than the finished answer. And use empowering language. Replace the rescuing phrases like, "let me handle it," with coaching phrases. What's the first step that you would take? What do you already know that could help? If you could imagine trying, what would that look like to you? Those questions direct the attention to the person's capabilities. Next, normalize failure as data. We're always talking about that as long as you learn something, it's not a failure. Reframe mistakes as information. After setbacks, ask, what did that teach you? Model curiosity and experimentation rather than judgment, and this helps to reduce shame and encourages future attempts. The next is provide role models and stories. Share stories of people who started small and built competence. Share your own stories and let them know that we've all been there. We're all learning by doing, falling, and getting back up with knowledge and experience. Set boundaries around help. Make agreements. I'll support you with X, but I won't do Y. Clear boundaries protect your energy and signal that the other person is responsible for their learning. Make encouragement specific. Instead of just saying, good job, say, you know what? You made a plan, you showed up, you tried something new, and that's huge. Specific praise links action to outcome and reinforces that learning cycle. Teach positive self-talk. People often adopt other people's narratives about themselves. Help them craft internal phrases that are realistic and generative. I can take one step. I don't know this yet. I can learn. Those small scripts change behavior over time. And design safety nets, not catch-all rescues. If someone is about to take a risk, offer contingency plans rather than taking the risk away. Ask, if that doesn't work, what's your backup? That reduces fear but allows practice. So speaking of practice, let's put this into practice. As you're going about your days next week, pick one relationship where you catch yourself doing things for someone because it's honestly faster or easier. It might be a child, a partner, a parent, or a colleague. So try this structure over the next few days. When they ask for help, pause. Ask one coaching question. Which part would you like me to help with? Maybe offer a tiny scaffold. Sit with them through the first 10 minutes. Give a single suggestion or teach one micro skill. Maybe set a short timeline for stepping back. I'll help now, then I'll check in tomorrow to see how it went. And give specific encouragement tied to action. You outlined 3 steps. That's a great start. And watch what changes. Notice not only how they respond, but how your relationship shifts. You may feel uneasy at first, and that's normal. When we were cavemen and women, we had to help or we'd be left out in the cold, literally. So not jumping to help can trigger that ancestral response. But courage grows in both of you when you do less and teach more. Let them learn to fly. Give them the wind beneath their wings rather than holding the wings for them. I heard Jay Shetty say something recently to the effect that you are not supposed to climb the mountain for someone. You're supposed to remind them that they have legs. Trust that people often surprise us and themselves when given the space to try. And if they need you, be there to steady the first steps, but not replace them. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's in the middle of learning. Help to remind them that you are there for them, but they can and should be there for themselves. If you're comfortable, share with us one small way that you'll step back this week. And as always, thank you for being here today, for yourself as well as for those that you care about. Thank you for the compassion that you carry and for the courage it takes to let others grow. Let's keep helping without enabling. Let's keep supporting without carrying. And let's help each other keep growing and building confidence, little by little and piece by piece. This podcast is based on my own life experiences. I'm not a therapist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, or any other licensed medical professional. Please share this podcast with anyone you think needs to hear this so that we all move forward, little by little and piece by piece. And thank you, Purple Planet, for sharing your music.